I'd like to call the meeting to order and advise everyone that this meeting is being recorded. Is there anyone else recording this meeting that's in attendance? There being no one, if you join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to start with special recognitions this evening, and it is my great pleasure to recognize Cassidy McIntyre as this year's Worcester County Superintendent's Association Superintendent Scholar Award. Cassidy's high school resume includes ranked number 1 in her class from freshman to senior year with a 4.936 GPA and a member of the National Honor Society. Recipient of the Harvard Prize Book Award, recipient of the AP U.S. History, Mathematics, Physics, and Spanish Academic Achievement Awards for upholding the highest GPA, has competed in dance for 11 years, winning countless awards, most notably being named National Young Miss Dance 2012. Recipient of the Mary Simonian Achievement Award in the Art of Dance 2013 for showcasing hard work, determination, and a sense of immense leadership in the studio at the Kathy Taylor School of Dance here in Auburn. Was Rocket of the Week 2013 for choreographing and coordinating the annual male talent show known as Mr. Auburn for 3 months. On a personal level, Cassidy hopes to attend Boston College, the College of the Holy Cross, or Bentley University in the fall to major in business with a possible minor in dance arts. Cassidy will attend the WCSA's annual scholarship luncheon with Mr. Hanfield and Dr. Brunell on January 9th, 2014, hosted this year at Assumption College. Please join me as we applaud Cassidy McIntyre. I've known Cassidy for many years personally and very deserving. I'm very proud of you, Cassidy. And also today, the Mass Certificate of Academic Excellence. It is my great pleasure to recognize Matthew Basolian as the recipient of this year's Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Certificate of Academic Excellence, guided by the criteria set by the MASS for the selection of the recipient. I share with you some of the impressive statistics that helped Matthew rise to the top. Earned perfect scores on his AP Biology, Chemistry, Stats, and Physics exams. Currently enrolled in 4 more AP classes with near perfect grade averages. Plays soccer. Involved in Central Mass District Band as well as the AHS Rocket Band. Conducts research on stem cells in a lab at Holy Cross. Currently ranked number 2 in the class of 2014. Attended World Cafe Strategic Plan event. Very impressive there, by the way. Important to note is the fact that there are numerous other students deserving of this award, a fact of which we should all be proud, which speaks to the district's commitment to educational excellence. So please join me as we recognize and applaud Matthew on his fantastic success. And I will say Matthew was in the group we were in there, and he really was a very strong participant in that cafe event. I'd like to hand to you this certificate. Excellent job. Okay. If you would like to, you can stay if you'd like, but if you'd like to leave, you excused. I know you have homework to do. Keep up the number 1, number 2 ranking. He's right on your heels.
That's right. That's great.
Great job. Congratulations.
Good job.
You never say that to us.
Are there any citizens' concerns or comments? There being none, I'll move on to the regular session minutes of November 12th and 13th, 2013.
Make a motion to accept those minutes.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote. We'll now move on to the student representatives report.
All right, well, a couple of weeks ago before Thanksgiving break, the International Club went to the North End in Boston, and we went around looking at the different types of foods that and the cultures that they came from within the North End, specifically Italian. Also, we have another upcoming field trip from NHS to the Boston Science Museum in several weeks. and I know we're all looking forward to that.
So, as like last Monday, we Try 2 began, which was yesterday, and it's the beginning of a new try. It's new classes, mostly, unless you take like an AP class, but you have full through all 3 tries. So it's pretty much like a new first day of school. I know my parents love it because they get all those sign-in sheets and things to sign and take home. So that was new, and it's like a nice little jumble. You get to see new kids that maybe weren't in classes last time. Winter sports started up yesterday with, I know, basketball tryouts and track, girls and boys track started up, and cheerleading is still continuing on throughout. The CARE program had their first meeting today, which the CARE program is when a select group of high school students will volunteer to go down to 5th grade of Julia Bancroft and Package Up School to talk about such issues as bullying, self-esteem, drugs and alcohol, and that we had our first meeting to get like who was in the group and what we were talking about, and we'll be heading to those schools starting in January. And finally, the Rocket and Student Council Club has recently started doing the Toys for Tots for around Christmas time so all high school students are involved to bring in toys to donate, and they'll go right back to the community, so which is good.
Very nice. Any questions?
No.
Thank you very much. We can now move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. In keeping with our special recognitions tonight, we have another one here, and I want to thank Mr. Gagnon, who comes each year to recognize an 8th grade student who will be participating in Project 351. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gagnon, if he wants to do a little introduction. Chris, or I'm happy to read this if you don't have it with you, whatever is easier. Okay. Okay. I understand the feeling. So as you'll recall, each year, Massachusetts Governor Patrick started this a number of years ago, that there is one student from each of the 351 communities who sends an 8th grade representative to take part in the day's events, that the goal being, to quote, and Mr. Page will remember this was part of the MASC presentation we went to inspire and amplify the youth, the power of our youth. So Christopher Keys is the representative from Auburn Middle School this year. To tell you a little bit about Chris, he has been involved in Boy Scouts of America for the past 8 years. During this time, he has volunteered his services by collecting food, working at the food pantry, retiring the American flags with members of the Tuttle Post, bell ringing for the Salvation Army at the holidays, creating and mailing Christmas cards to the troops, placing the flags at the cemetery to honor our veterans on Flag Day. He raked leaves for our older citizens in Auburn, helped out during the holidays at the Ecotarium, as well as for the book drive for Auburn Library, and cleaned up at the fire station, the town, and Faith Baptist Church. Chris is a member of St. Joseph's Church in Auburn, and each year he performs over 10 hours of community service projects. Some of these include working at the Mustard Seed in Worcester, Walk for Hunger at Auburn Youth and Family Services, serving coffee and donuts after Sunday Mass, craft projects, and helping out at Kids Night. Chris participates in cross country at Auburn Middle School, plays soccer and basketball for the Auburn Recreation Department, and he is a member of the ski club as well. As evidenced by the aforementioned comments, Chris, I think, is a perfect candidate to represent the Auburn Public Schools in this 351 initiative. So congratulations, Christopher. I know you will serve us very proudly in this capacity. That would be great.
Keep up the good work.
I'm sure you concur with me. It's so impressive when I hear not only about Cassidy and Matthew, but about Christopher Himola being an 8th grader and the accomplishments and commitments that they've made, not only to their academics, but to the community. It's really heartwarming, and you should be very proud. Very proud. And you'll come back and fill us in after you go to the presentation? That would be great.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome to.
You're welcome. You can leave if you'd like, and I'm sure you have plenty of homework to do.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon, as well, for taking the time out.
Did
He
their
does.
homework right when they got home from school.
Yeah.
move on to park field test update.
Just a quick update. I noted in here the actual subjects in grade levels. I've shared this with you previously. But we included in here a memo from the Department of Ed, and there has been considerable discussion around whether we would have the students, and this is superintendents across the Commonwealth, have the students who are participating in the park field tests likewise participate in MCAS. So I brought this issue to the leadership team recently, and we had a discussion around it. It is our recommendation that we continue to have these students also do the MCAS test. The way that we would schedule this is we would do the scheduling of the MCAS first, and then do the park towards the latter part of the window. The reason for this decision is we're going to get absolutely no data back on the park test. We won't even get it in the aggregate. So we do make considerable use of our MCAS data, and we'd only be able to eliminate those particular grade levels where students will be taking the park field test. So we thought that would create an imbalance in terms of the scores that we're going to get, our CPI scores, in the fall. I would like your vote of support for us doing that. And again, our priority would be the MCAS tests and scheduling those and making sure there's ample opportunity for students to take as long as they need to on that, and then to schedule the park tests thereafter.
Do you want to make a motion and then open up a discussion?
I'll make the motion to, not to waive the, is that the motion that I'm making here? To support the superintendent and leadership team's recommendation to have our students take both the MCAS and the parks field test in the spring 2014.
Is there a second?
Second.
Liz?
I just have a question. How many hours does a student take the MCAS? I mean, my kids have taken it, I just don't know how many hours it is.
They really say it's an untimed test. They can take as much time as they need, but typically a session is scheduled for approximately an hour. But we have students, and it depends on the session. If it's the long composition, that's a far longer session. Those that are more multiple choice are more about in the hour range.
So in total, about?
In total, I'd have to get that for you because it varies by grade level. Depends
okay.
how many tests and subjects they're taking.
And then about how long do they say the parks test takes?
The park is, they're saying that each session would be approximately an hour, and those are not intended to be untimed.
Okay. And how many sessions then does?
It notes on here, so each, so Julie Bancroft,
Oh, I see.
grade 4, will
I'm
take
sorry.
2, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So this is a far less demanding in terms of the time because of the field test piece.
And then how many weeks, days, months between the two?
There's actually windows for these, depending on whether it's the PBA, and actually Dr. Lozay and I are going to give a pretty detailed presentation on the park at our next meeting. But the PBA, the performance-based assessment, that's taking place in March, with the end-of-year assessment happening in May. So the May one, there will be some overlap. That one would be more overlap with the MCAS testing than the other. But the windows that they have are close to a little over 3 weeks of school time windows when you can schedule these in.
And you don't feel that our MCAS scores are going to be skewed by the amount of testing that these kids are going to be taking at that time?
I mean, I think that that's a concern that superintendents have discussed and have raised those issues with the Department of Ed. The challenge is where we're going to get absolutely no data back from Park, and that's why our focus will be to schedule the MCAS just as we typically will. Now, moving forward, the Board of Education did just approve Commissioner Chester's recommendation to do the field test. But moving forward in the 14-15 year, school districts will, unless they change it, but this is the plan right now, school districts will be able to select whether they want to take Park or MCAS. So this, we believe, will be the only year where they will be doing both of them.
I am not asking you this because I'm not in support of what you're suggesting. I know that you always put kids first, and I would have no problem voting for this.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Through the chair. Dr. Brunel, is there going to be individual prep for MCAS and for Park, or is it pretty much going to be the same set of frameworks or standards addressed? I mean, I know that we have certain MCAS preps that we handle now. How much will that change as far as the scope of the test?
We don't, in terms of any preparation work that we would do with our students, I don't anticipate that we'd do anything different for Park. The only thing, if you remember, town meeting approved the iPads and keyboards. We're currently testing the different keyboards to see which are the best ones for us to have long-term, the Bluetooth keyboards that we have to have with the iPads. That would really be the only preparation, is to get those in the hands of our students. We'll be taking the test online, so that way so it's truly a test of what they know as opposed to their typing skills,
Okay.
which is what we don't want.
Do you think there'd be any concern from the parents, or have you heard of any in other districts or in your conversations?
I've not, I will say this was an issue down at the MASC conference that was discussed. I believe that there are some individuals who may say they opt their child out of this, but I think that, it's a fairly small number of them, so half of the fourth grade will be taking it for approximately 2 hours is what they're anticipating. So this decision was really weighed, as Mrs. Griffin said, and I know you all realize, what's in the best interest of kids, and we believe the data that we get from this for this 1 year for the field test. If we were going to get any data from Park, we probably would be recommending something different. But
Right.
to have them take a test that we get no information on, it seemed educationally disruptive how we use the MCAS to not have the data this year.
Right. All right, 2 more questions. How do we choose which students will be taking the test?
We actually, they're going to give us some more guidance around that. And what they have been very clear in saying is you can't select, your top students or your struggling students, that it's got to be a random selection. We don't have the specific guidance on how they're going to ask us to do that at this point, but they are going to be providing guidance.
Okay, and lastly, how are we going to present it to the students? I mean, we know that when MCAS comes around, it's a big deal, and a lot of the students are stressed out about it.
Sure.
Are we going to present it in a way that's very important, what you're doing here as far as taking this test and helping to improve education, at least statewide?
Sure.
If not in the district. But we'd like more of your focus to be on the MCAS, and we don't want you to get too upset over taking this test. Is that something that we could?
It is, and I think, as part of our discussion, that we are going to keep the focus with our students on the MCAS and doing the best that they can. In the past, we've had grade levels who have been randomly selected by the U.S. Department of Education to take the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And we get no data back from that other than in the aggregate, looking across. And those are scores that you'll see are publicized that the students on the NAEP did, as well as students in other countries and things. Our focus has always been on the MCAS, and then to simply do your best on this test, and no stress about it.
I feel like they might actually do better that way.
I think they will.
There might not be an accurate reading
Sure.
of what they're capable of,
Yeah.
but they may do better with less stress, and it should be less stressful since it's actually not counting toward anything.
Right. It's really their opportunity to test the questions, not necessarily to test the students. So we'll be sure that they know that too.
And a great opportunity for them to be using the iPads that they're being
Right.
trained on.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And as always, I'm assuming then that you'll be diligent in talking to the parents and explaining what's
Absolutely.
going on, because I know
Yes.
we'll all probably hear about
Yes.
this in the supermarket, or they'll be
Yes.
calling on the phone.
We absolutely
That
will.
our kids are being tested so much, but
Yes.
you're so good
Yeah.
at providing information that I'm sure that's
We will.
a
I need
no-brainer.
to notify the Department of Ed by Friday, every superintendent does, of their decision on this. And shortly thereafter, we'll be sure and let parents know, specifically the ones in those grades, but maybe even like an upcoming district newsletter.
Are there any other questions? I think, by the way, who has enjoyed those were great questions, because anyone that is watching, there are a lot of answers that we'll put out there right now, so thank you for that.
Thank you for saying so.
very
Just
informative.
one last thing. Maybe we could ask our students how you would feel about double testing.
No.
I don't want to put you on the spot, just a brief answer. You've been listening.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think a lot of kids would be willing, but again, I think you also have to make the option, like, when you let the parents know if they're not comfortable with taking the test, then they don't have to. they're uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, I feel like
Isn't it? Yeah.
the park test doesn't go out to the high school.
I'm sorry?
Does the park test not go out to the high school?
There are some high schools, we didn't have any selected, and it's not going to be for 10th graders, though. Eventually, it's going to go up to the high school, but not this year,
Oh,
not
all
this
right.
time.
I was just thinking in like a high school standpoint, like some kids already like, or for a junior and senior standpoint, some kids already have to take like an SAT, and if they're in an AP class, they might have to take that in the same
Right.
week, which is a lot more stress. But I can see, I don't think it has that much stress on the student, even though like the MCAS is a big deal, and I don't know much about the park test because I've never took it, but I don't see it as that much of a problem because, I don't know, I think if you're chosen, I think you'll be more randomly chosen, even though it's randomly chosen, I think you'll be more, like, striving more to get a better grade on it.
Sure.
Excellent. I've been wanting to ask them some questions.
There you go.
Thank you.
Move
You
on.
just need to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Person is first.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It is a vote. The questions I lost track.
Yeah. So the secretary's negotiation, Mrs. Gribbins had indicated that they were willing to begin at 5:30. They are. So there's a recommended motion there. If they're still willing to serve.
Make the motion to nominate Mrs. Gribbins as the school committee representative on the Secretary's negotiating subcommittee.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It is quite
He
unanimous.
was quite adamant about that second.
I know, he really
The
was.
November.
Couple of informational items. The November 27th professional development, the morning of Thanksgiving, prior to Thanksgiving break, we had, as you can see here, a number of really high-quality programs and presentations that took place. So I thank Dr. Lozay for doing that. And with your permission, I would love to ask the students what they thought of not having school on the half-day before Thanksgiving.
I was confused. I thought I was coming in the next day, but I found out that I wasn't, and
Yeah.
I was actually kind of happy, but.
I liked it too because I could see the way the high school schedule is set up with, especially this year, it was Monday, Tuesday were finals. So I could see a half day. We always have our Thanksgiving assembly there, but I could see a half day as if we already had our finals and we did like had short classes, we wouldn't be like doing anything in there. But if I got everything done in the first 2 days, which is good, and I kind of liked it too. Didn't have to wake up early on a half day.
That's good. Just as a reminder, tomorrow night is the budget kickoff that'll take place at Town Hall at 7 o'clock. I did leave on here the FY15 budget discussions. We will be having a leadership team meeting tomorrow with the kickoff. I did not ask any leadership team members to come tonight, but we certainly can, if you have any interest in them, on the 18th or even on January 8th. And then lastly, I have the NCLB, the No Child Left Behind report cards. We've included a copy for you of the district one as well as for each school. These have been posted on the website. Email notifications went out to our students' families on Monday the 25th, and they're available at central office in all of the schools. So our students continue to make progress, and this really contains information that you have seen previously in the presentations that were made in October.
Move on to unfinished business.
So the food service director, we have in the final stages of negotiations. I am able to share with you that it's Janice King, who is currently the food service director in the Quabog Regional School District. I thank Mr. Gray as well as Mrs. Matthews, the business managers of Leicester and Auburn, who led this team that looked. And as you can see here, from some of her credentials, we're pleased to have her join our team. Obviously, it's always sad to see someone go. Mrs. Pitson has given considerable time and energy and many years to the Auburn Public Schools. But Mrs. King was the unanimous choice of the interview team. Both Dr. Paolucci and myself met with her as well. As noted here, she recently began a breakfast program, which has seen a huge profit since school started this year. She was the catalyst for that school system winning the USDA Healthier U.S. School Challenge Bronze Level Award in June of 13. She's increased student meal participation rates by 40% with innovative meal planning, and has increased the training and national certification for school nutrition staff by 50%. And she is a nationally recognized food service director. So I think she will be a positive and contributing member to our team. So we look forward to having her on board officially right after the start of the year, and I will bring her to a meeting to introduce her to you.
Okay.
We did include, it was your request as part of our discussion around iPads, was there a more cost-effective way to present school committee packets to you, potentially with iPads? So Mr. Gray and Mrs. Zotner compiled this information here. And what you can see is what is noted here is actually the cost per year. So if you look at the initial cost of 5 iPads being approximately $2,500, should you wish to go that route at the rate of $1,356.40, this would pay off its investment in less than 2 years. So I share that with you, and if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them, or if you want to provide us any direction.
Through the chair, my question would be to Elaine. Do you believe that if we were to use the iPads, that we could access the material in a format that would be easy for us all to read at the same time, as far as opening up the files and kind of paging through and in the order of the superintendent's report?
I think so. I mean, I have an iPad at home, and I haven't had any problems accessing things and to make it bigger if you're not able to read it very easily, you know. So I think it's a great way to go.
Okay, so we would have, we could still have the hard copy of the superintendent's report and kind of work off of that, as well as, you know, if we wanted to have our own notebooks and look at the files through the iPad. Do you think that would format in a way that...
Typically, through the chair, what I do when I use my iPad for such things, leadership team or collaborative meetings, is I just open up the email that Mrs. Zotner sends out, and then as I need a file, I open that up. Now, as you see, there are multiple files that you get for any school committee packet. So while I think there may be some adjustment period to it, I think it would work reasonably well. Quite well, I think, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Is this something we want to discuss now? Do you want to think about this, bring it back to the next meeting?
If I may, through the chair, I don't know how to word this. Are we within legal rights? I don't really know how to word this. Where we could spend this money on iPads for the school committee through the school budget?
Sure, it would be they would belong to the school.
Okay.
And currently, right now, you authorize the spending of almost $1,400 a year for the hard copy packets.
Okay.
So when you leave the school, you know, the iPad would remain, but I don't see any issue with it at all.
Okay, I just know there's some
Yep.
things that can go through the school budget and some things
Sure.
that can't, so I just wanted to make sure we were...
Yep.
we were
There
clear
are
on
school
that.
committees who have gone paperless. In fact, probably a few years ago at the School Committee Superintendent Conference, that was one of the sessions, going paperless, just to try and avoid having all of this documentation. Now, what you couldn't get paperless would be anything executive session. That would have to come hard copy that night. But there are schools that are going this route for sure.
What is the life expectancy? I'm just curious that,
Of the iPads?
I mean,
We've had them in our primary schools now for 4 years? 3 years or 4 years? I mean, we purchased them through the CIP, so well more than 5 years.
I don't know if it's something too where if you're buying newer ones, you give them to the kids and we could take the older ones.
Sure.
You know, I don't know if we want to put it on the agenda for the next meeting and we can have a discussion which direction you'd like to go in, if that's something that you want to kind of research and consider.
That's.
Yeah,
I'd like to put it on the agenda.
I'm all for
Yeah,
saving
I'd
money,
to
but
put it
I'd
on
like
the
to
agenda.
I like
do a little bit of
Because, I mean, the other thing that, because like when I'm, like for meetings and things, you can even have a keyboard where you're completely writing all your notes and everything in. That's an extra cost though, but I guess my question would be, you know, for anticipation of like next week, is how would you consider the ownership of them? How, you know, the person has it for the 3 years that they're on the school committee? How I would be, that's what I would want to know for the next meeting, is the logistics of it.
Yeah, a lot of them.
I would be, through the chair, I'd be happy to reach out to schools who have gone this route or districts and see, you know, how they've handled it or any recommendations.
So we'll discuss it at our next meeting and make a decision.
As I had mentioned, the school committee superintendent's conference in November. And Mr. Page, feel free to jump in at any point, but there were still considerable, when I was reviewing through my notes, information regarding educator evaluation that continues to be a big priority. Park was one of the ones that we saw and participated in. I attended also an early literacy workshop, which was nice, as I sit on that statewide panel on early literacy. There were three different, it was structured a little bit differently this year, but there were 3 guest speakers in the general auditorium area, I guess it would be called. And 2 of them were tremendous, I thought. And the third one's message was very somber about, you know, school shootings and whatnot. And it was a professor from Northeastern who's an expert on this. But I think that what everybody left with was he didn't seem to have any recommendations or hopeful comments around it, other than, you know, they happen very infrequently, but it was a rather down presentation as compared to the other 2, which were really outstanding.
Yeah, and I agree with the superintendent, there's no doubt. I mean, you left there like bummed out, if
Yeah.
you want to say it that way, or whatever you want to say it, but, I mean, you felt really bad when you walked out. He's talking about all the deaths and stuff like that, and then he was talking about the media over mediating it,
Right.
and here he is in a conference doing the same thing that he's yelling at the news people for doing, and he really felt bad when you left.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he got any points around, other than we had these tragedies, and I don't think it was right. And a lot of people left that way, even other people that were sitting there were making comments as we were getting up,
Yeah.
but the other 2 were great.
The other 2 were great, and the first speaker was Mike Staver, and he was able to weave some humor into his speech all around leadership and it taking courage. And I've since bought the book and have not yet started it, but look forward to reading it. So it was inspiring. Okay, so school building committee update. We met on November 19th. We'll meet again on December 17th. The 60% completion designs will be submitted to MSBA on the 20th. But I also did want to make you aware, and I actually spoke with Ellie Olson earlier today, who will be publicizing this. As part of the interviews for the construction managers, they were asked, each applicant firm was asked whether they would consider hiring local contractors to potentially be considered to build the middle school project. As you know, Fontaine has been selected for that, so they have created, at the request of the SBC, a local outreach effort form. It's posted on the Auburn Public Schools website for you to take a look. Ms. Jacobson has posted it on the town's website. We've notified the Chamber of Commerce, and there are hard copies in Town Hall, the Public Library, and the Senior Center as well. While there's no guarantee that an individual would be hired as a subcontractor or through the subcontractors, it was really a priority for the school building committee to at least try to promote some local contractors, so I think, which is great, of the SBC doing that, and as did Mrs. Olson today, so she's going to be putting an article in the paper coming up, which was great about that.
If I may, through the chair, I have a question. Has the whole business about the emergency shelter been put to bed now? Is that like done and over? It seems like that keeps coming up every meeting.
Right. So what the SBC voted at their last meeting was not to put any funding towards an emergency shelter. It's actually the decision of the school committee, and I suppose the Board of Selectmen may make a request to designate a school as shelter, but what the SBC has said is they do not, unless there were state or federal guidelines that required a town to have a specific number of square feet per population. In my communications with Ms. Jacobson, she's not aware, nor am I, of any such requirement. So that issue is a resolved issue, I would say. We currently have the high school as the primary shelter, and the current middle school is the secondary shelter.
Okay. Do we know where this keeps coming up from? I mean, why does the contractor keep bringing it up at the meeting?
It's actually, has come through a request by the town.
Town.
Yeah. Came through a request by the town.
Okay, so we finally told the town no, done.
The town has been told, the SBC has voted not to spend any money on that.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes. The master plan team, both Mrs. Gibbery and Mrs. Gribbins serve on that. We had our most recent meeting on the 19th of November. Both the education and existing building subcommittees presented their work to date, and we will meet again on January 14th. But we continue to make progress, which is exciting, and I'm hopeful, as I've shared previously, that they will be presenting through Mr. Ringard, the chairperson, some updates to the committee later on this spring.
Moving on to new business.
I share these with you. I mean, these really are a requirement. When a student moves to the district and comes with an IEP that requires either a child-specific IA or even we've had before an ABA, but I share these with you to seek your support. I don't want to be bringing on staff of which you are unaware. This person, the posting has gone out, and don't know if we have hired anyone for this yet, but I do seek your support for this. Legally, we have no option but to do this.
Make a motion to support the hiring of an additional child-specific IA at Mary D. Stone for a student new to the district whose IEP requires it.
Second.
I just have a quick question. I know we have these unanticipated costs. How are we budget-wise when it comes to?
We're actually doing okay budget-wise, and that really is in large part to, we had some unanticipated retirements. And generally, when a teacher leaves at the $75,000 to $78,000 range and a new person is brought in, that's where we get those savings. And, each year, the contract expects them to notify us by October 1st of the year prior. If they don't do that, they still get any benefits they're entitled to, but they're delayed a year. So each year, in fact, we've had some that do that.
Are there any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is a vote.
The second annual tree lighting will take place this Friday. There will be the high school band with their new uniforms. I don't know if anyone made it to the Thanksgiving Day game, which was actually played on the 26th, but due to the rain, they were able to play the national anthem, but they were not able to do their halftime performance. But the uniforms look fabulous. We did post it up on Facebook. They will be playing on Friday. Both math students, the culinary students, will be providing some hot cocoa, coffee, and cookies. And I hear that Santa Claus will make an appearance. So if anyone's interested, please stop by at 6 o'clock.
Yes, wait.
I just wanted to bring something under new business as she's talking about the lighting. The Santa Claus call-in show, that annual that we have every year, is going to be on the 12th of December from 6 to 8 on Channel 11. The number is 508-832-5323. And you can call that night and talk to Santa, as we have for the past 12 years. And we're going to do it this year again. Santa Claus is a little early this year because he's got a lot of work to do, but he's going to be here. And just want to let you know, December 12th, 6 to 8, call Santa.
The helper elf will be there too?
Yeah, to help. Yes, he will.
Okay.
He shows up for everything.
Coming events?
The holiday concerts will be starting. The first ones are a week from tomorrow, and run right through the 19th of December, and I truly can't think of anything more appropriate to get one in the holiday spirit. So you're obviously all welcome to attend. And then on the 20th is a nice tradition where the music department actually takes the high school students on a tour of the elementary and middle schools. Really gets some excitement going about the band program, and it's a great way for the kids. They love seeing the other kids. It's very nice.
Anyone else have anything of new business? I have something briefly. I don't know if the community was aware, but we have a Fred Astaire among us. Mr. Scobie will be participating in this year's Dancing with the Stars in
Yes, I'm
Auburn.
in now.
You're in.
So we'll be promoting that
say
heavily
thanks,
from
Jeff?
now until February.
Thank you.
Good for you.
That's really
I couldn't
fantastic.
resist.
That was good. That was a good one.
Unless I have an injury or something.
That won't happen.
Or during.
Now, that may
Maybe
happen.
during May. But
Well, if
good
there's
for
nothing
you.
else under new business, we can now move on to business and financial.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first piece of information you have before you is transfers. These are for informational purposes. There's nothing moving from one class to another, and they reflect just minor adjustments to various accounts that we have reconciled over the last month.
Are there any questions?
The next document you have before you is the revolving account quarterly update. As you recall, the district has a number of revolving accounts that go from year to year, and this is a reconciliation of what our beginning or ending balance was at the end of last fiscal year, what we brought in, or what monies have been received, what monies have been expended, and the balance as of last week. So this is a recap of all the various revolving accounts that the district oversees.
If there are no questions.
Through the chair, if I may, the girls' ice hockey, what are we doing with that money? I mean, I know at one point, they were paying for their own, so I see that this went from, 13, there's no expenditures in 14, so we're just gonna continue just to carry that in that category, or? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I absolutely do understand what you're asking, and we will check that with Mr. Garno. I know that on sometimes they save things for uniforms, but theirs would be fairly new, so let us check that and get back to you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
The next document you have before you is an update on grants that have been applied for and have been approved. As you can see, as of today's meeting date, we have received or been approved for $782,599 of grants through various grant opportunities. We have one in progress, which is for an academic support grant for $9,500.
May I ask
Yes.
just a quick question? Are any of these competitive, or are these all?
I believe the smaller ones, like the yellow school bus, those are competitive, but most everything else is are grants that are awarded because of title grants.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. Are you good?
Good, thank you, yep.
The next large document is your year-to-date budget report. This is a reflection of expenditures compared to budget through November 25th, 2013. Once again, both myself and the business staff go through and we look for any issues that bring us any concerns, and over through the first 5 months of the fiscal year, things seems to be in line. We'll do a much more detailed analysis. We're coming up to our 6-month midpoint of the fiscal year, but at this point, there's nothing of any concern or alarm that I feel I need to bring to the school committee at this point, unless somebody has any questions.
There being none, I thank you, Mr. Gale.
And the last document is just a recap of the previous year's unpaid bills at this point. As you can see, we have a couple vendors, in particular Lantel, which is our security camera company. We've had some issues with cameras at the high school. We've kind of used these We have not paid these bills mainly because we've used it as a way to negotiate with them to get them to work on the cameras. And then the uniforms are for the band, which recently came in, so those will be paid in an upcoming warrant.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Well, I have to say, we do have to go into executive session this evening. Entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll make the motion to go into executive session for MGL Chapter 30, Section 21A3, discuss litigation.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. Gribbins?
Yes.
Mrs. Gibbrey?
Yes.
Mr. Scobie?
Yes.
Mr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Laurie?
Yes. Good night, everyone.